Hi everyone, I hope you guys can hear me. Hi Aman, good evening. Hi Santosh. We'll just wait for a bit, as usual, maybe a minute or so, and once a few more students join, we can start. Hi Rohan. Any of you attended my LMTC sessions in Delhi or Kochi or Bangalore? Hi Astha, hi Ambuj, hi Jalaj. Jalaj, did we speak at the end of the LMTC? I had did we have a chat? Yeah, okay. Because I remember you said that after at the end of the session, I was thinking as to, okay, did I speak to Jalaj? Yeah, yeah, cool. I figured, cool. I figured it was you. Yeah. Hi, everyone, I hope you guys can see me. So we'll start with the verbal ability masterclass. So as usual, we'll start with the poll. I hope scores have been looking up for those of you who attended the LMTC session live or saw the recording of it on my IMS. So we had done an online session also. So I hope all of you guys have taken a look at that. Before we start, let's do the poll. Yeah. How many marks do you consistently score from VA? Only VA, not RC. How have people done? So let's see. So a third of you are scoring in 0 to 5. So bulk of you are scoring under 10. 70% of the people are scoring under 10. 10 to 15. So the 6 to 19, I hope you guys knew it was a typo and it's 6 to 9. So 70% are scoring under 10 and 20% are scoring around 10 to 15, which is good. And 2% are scoring greater than 15. Fantastic. Those of you who are not checking, please first go and do that because you need to know how many marks you're getting. So that's the first step. Yeah. Yeah. So in the LMTC sessions, we did a few questions with the technique and everything. So we'll do a few more questions here. Again, the same process only. We can get a few questions, queries back and forth, some doubts that you guys have, and hope that at the end of the session, by the end of the session, you have a clear idea about each of the techniques that we are going to use. And the goal is to score 10 to 15 marks. So 10 to 15 marks from here is the goal from VA. Yeah. We've already done the LMTC verbal masterclass. So those of you, LMTC, not verbal, LMTC as a whole. So for in the LMTC recording that you'll find on my IMS, please go through the verbal part once again in case you have not gone through it, or in case you missed that, those who attended online, so that the test taking strategy part is clear, how you have to divide your time and all of that. Right? RC Masterclass 1 is done, RC Masterclass 2 I have done. Right? I'll do an RC Masterclass 3 as well sometime later. So the recordings of that also for RC, you guys have to watch that. What we'll do today, LMTC, Arnav, I'm talking about last mile to CAT. Summary questions, we'll discuss the XYZ method, incorrect sentence in context, the labeling method, jumble paragraph, the sort link sequence method, and for missing sentence in context, we'll discuss the before after method. Ground rules, as usual, stay patient. Most of the queries, I have included a notes sort of a slide as well, so that typical queries are handled there. I will handle queries usually in the chatbot only and not in the Q&A option. You guys know that by now. I'll go at slightly less than normal speed because there are test takers at all levels. Yeah. Now, the task, at least 10 to 12. If you can get 15 marks, that's absolutely fantastic. So for a couple of question types, there are no negative marks. So because there are no negative marks, I've seen that students try to treat it like a free hit. So there are no negative marks. So let me just go do whatever I want with it. But no negative marking does not mean it's a free hit, because you still can get 3 marks from it. So Kinjal will do in total around 12 questions today with discussion and everything. Yeah. Not 12, close to 15, I'm sorry. Yeah. Or 3 to 4 questions from each type. Yeah. No negative marking also does not mean that you hit without any technique. So even when somebody has a free hit, they're waiting and ensure they're not blindly swinging at the ball, right? They're still waiting to know that, okay, if it's a short ball, this is what I'll do. I'll wait. It's very likely that this person is going to try to bowl a yorker to me, or try to bowl a full outside the off stump sort of a white ball. So they're always thinking as to the 2 or 3 options and then ready to read that out of the bowler's hand, right? So no negative marking does not mean that you hit without any technique. 1/3 of the questions are from VA. That means 1/3 of your marks should be from VA. So it's a very, very straightforward, equation. If you're getting 30 marks in total, ideally a good split. But if you get 30 marks from RC, absolutely fantastic. So that's absolutely not an issue. But I'm saying typically, because that's a scoring area, you can, and you're not going to do 1 RC, realistically 3 RCs, 2 RCs plus 1 RC is a bonus. So we know that 1/3 of your marks are coming from this. We're getting 10 from here, 20 from there. If you're getting 15 here, and then maybe around 30 from there, or even 25 from there, and you'll get to 40. Yeah. Yeah, so the number of TETA questions is always number of TETA questions is not fixed. The jumble paragraph is always TETA, and summary question is not TETA. So that much we know, that jumble paragraph is TETA, summary question not TETA. Para complete, the what you call the this one, which is the incorrect sentence in context and missing sentence in that, and in the odd one out, are also TETA. Now, how many questions in each, we don't know. Suppose sometimes that 8 questions that are there, you might get 1 jumbled paragraph, and sometimes so you might get slightly more. So, but more or less, that you can say that, say it is 2, 2, 2, 2, right? So you'll get about 6 questions in TETA. So after this session, so usually, as I keep saying this, verbal should not be done based on gut feel and feelings. So it is very likely that VA is the one with which RC people at least devote some amount of time. But VA is the thing where people try to do it very casually. So the process is that every single time you're faced with a question, you should let the process do the work for you, right? So I keep saying this always, that if I take any of these things casually means without, not that I'm not serious, but without any process, where I'm reading the option and then I try to look at the answers and then try to just eliminate the options without actually following any specific process, I end up making a lot of mistakes, right? So I can safely say that if I just do it purely without any sort of process, just doing it in my head somehow or the other, I'm sure that even I might get 0 questions out of the 8 questions right as well. I have no doubt about that, because that's the way these questions are framed. Yeah. So we'll start with the summary question. Yeah. What are the skills being tested? the main thing is the ability to comprehend, condense, and isolate main idea. Why am I saying isolate main ideas? Because in an entire paragraph, you will have, how many sentences will you have? You will have like 4 5 sentences, sometimes 6 sentences. 6 sentences have to be reduced to one sentence, right? 6 sentences have to be reduced to one sentence. That means only the key ideas are all, maybe even the key idea which takes one sentence there has to be converted into a few words, right? All supporting ideas and smaller ideas need to be ignored, and you convert the ideas, key ideas on these 9 sentences into short phrases, and it has to become one yeah, right? I haven't changed the slide, it's the same slide. Yeah. So the usual process, read the passage and the options. If it's an easy question, the answer will become obvious. If it's a tough question, you will get caught between two options. So the main thing is, where do you find the reasoning space for all of this to happen? So the first and most important thing is, do not go to the options as soon as you read the passage. Stop. How do you know that you have understood this passage with the small paragraph that has been given, right? So your first task is to make sense of it. And just reading from start to end does not mean that you have made sense of it. It is still hazy in your head. So read only the paragraph, don't go to the options. Split it into the three big ideas. Okay, this is one big idea, this is the second big idea, this is the third big idea, right? And these are the three big ideas, and use small phrases to do that. You don't need to make big sentences, right? Check the option to see whether it has each of these X, Y, and Z. Eliminate options that are important, missing the most important ones. So the correct option ideally will have all three, right? But if you've eliminated three options because they're incorrect, they're measured, they're ignoring, they're giving you faulty logic, and the correct one only has two, one which has no nothing, logic is absolutely perfect as per the paragraph, but it has only two ideas, you can still go for that. Go for it does not mean that every time all three should be there. Between two options that have all three, it makes sense to choose the one which has, yeah, which has all three. Yeah. So information. So typical flow of a paragraph is what? Information or supporting idea, and a main idea. Right. So the main idea should always be there. We'll see. I'll take one easy question I've taken here just to show that, that how it is, the main idea sometimes is the only thing that is mentioned. Each option, each question will be different. Sometimes all three will be present. Sometimes only the main idea will be present. Right? Now, let's look at a very, very easy question. Just give me a minute, guys. Just give me a minute. Yeah, let's start with this. Are you guys able to see my slides right now? Yes, right. Yeah. Yeah. Would it just check, maybe because you're looking at it on the mobile, there might be an issue. Now, if we look at this particular paragraph, it's a slightly larger, paragraph. Now, if you see what's the best way to look at this, in the initial part, it's saying for each of the past 3 years, temperatures have seen, hit peaks. Amount of carbon dioxide, it's at the highest. Now, the key idea, so this is information. If you see that the information is what temperatures have been are very, very high, amount of carbon dioxide is very, very high. This does not cause storms like Harvey. They've always been these storms, but it makes them wetter and more powerful. So there are peak temperatures and there is more carbon dioxide. This is making them more wetter and powerful. And they're giving you now from this, if you look at this entire part, they have kept in italics. Italics is actually that entire part is describing the process, right? So if I'm giving you an important idea and then the process are actually the details. Now, can you actually in a summary go in and discuss the entire process? No. The key ideas are important. So hence that entire part we know should go. And then we come to the last part, which says that as a result of more than 100 years of human-related global warming, which has melted glaciers and thermally expanded the seawater. So what do we know? High temperatures and CO2 like never before. This does not cause storms, but makes storms like Harvey more powerful. Man-made global warming melts glaciers, causing increase in sea volume that makes them more powerful. Right. So the three key ideas that it is high temperatures and CO2 like never before. It is a man-made global warming that is causing all of this, and it's making these more powerful. Right. So Niharika, I have kept this in italics. So in the original, in the previous slide, it wasn't there in italics. So I put this in italics so that you know that this part is getting into the process, right? So that was my way of highlighting that. Yeah. Now we have these three options. We have very clearly, so we're looking at all three and we are looking at how to go to each option. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to give each option. And for today's session, just make a list of for every question number 1, 2, 3, 4, and keep striking off every option as you're reading it. If you want to keep an option, keep it. So for every question, make a list 1, 2, 3, 4 for the options, and then keep striking them. Yes, Adira. It just means that you just need to make three small pointers. So bulk of the people have chosen close to 78% have chosen option 3, 16% have chosen option 2. Right. Now, if you look at the first option, the storm Harvey is one of the regular annual ones from Gulf of Mexico. Global warming and Harvey are unrelated. So it is not saying that global warming is making, rising temperatures are making more storms more powerful and more destructive. That key idea that the storms are becoming more powerful is not there. And it is saying that global warming and these are unrelated phenomena. It's not that they're unrelated. They're related in the fact that they're making it heavier. Right. Next one. So the first option goes, global warming does not breed storms but makes them more destructive. So only one idea is there of all three. But this entire part, the Clausius-Clapeyron equation, though it predicts potential increase, cannot predict the scale of damage. Now that it cannot predict the scale of damage, this idea is not there in the whole paragraph as such, right? And it's just reducing the whole thing to one line, that global warming does not cause storms but makes it more powerful. So this is the one. This second part is incorrect, that it cannot predict the scale. That is an idea that is not even mentioned there. Not that it can predict or cannot predict. It just says that it predicts the potential increase. Right? So which is why, because this is incomplete, this goes. Option 4, a few people have marked, but straight away it is saying it is naive to think. It is naive to think, with saying that it is stupid to think, it is silly to think, it is childish to think. Anywhere in the passage is the passage offering any sort of judgment? This is stupid, this is silly. It's just saying this does not cause. It's not saying anywhere that it is stupid to think it is causing. So those who have chosen option 4, always be very, very clear that you cannot introduce new ideas, and please question the words that are mentioned. That, okay, is it naive? So I would straight away reject option 4 and not go anywhere further, because it straight away says it's naive, right? Whereas the passage is not speaking, giving any sort of judgment about it. So this goes option 3, global warming melts glaciers, resulting in seawater volume expansion. This enables more water vapor to fill the air. Thus, modern storms contain more destructive energy. Yeah. So easily comparing this whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, so Divyansh says, how do we solve complex para summaries? We'll discuss that at the end. We'll discuss this once we finish, the 4 questions that are here. Right. Let's look at the next one. So in this passage, it's completely full of ideas, not too much of process, but full of ideas here. So what are they saying? To do a good translation, you need 2 skills. One, the knowledge of the language, and second, familiarity with the culture. Right. So as a translator needs 2 things: knowledge of language and culture. Next, they're saying that for an Indian translating into English, this thing would be less. So the next part says what? The second part says, for Westerners, they won't have a grasp of they will never have a grasp of the culture as Indians have it. Whereas Indians might not be as fluent in English as Westerners. So that is the next big idea. In translating Indian works into English, Indian translators will lack language skills, while British or American translators will lack cultural skills. And the big idea, a single point idea here, if I have to reduce the whole thing into, say, just tell me one thing, what is this passage advocating? I will clearly say that Indian translators should translate books from Indian languages into English. Right? That is the key idea. Why? Because it's easier to fix lack of language skills, but it's tough to fix cultural understanding. Since lack of language skills is easier to remedy than lack of cultural understanding, the job of such translation is better left to Indians. So the final conclusion of this is that the job of translation is better left to Indians. Why is it? Because you need things, languages and culture. Indians understand the culture, language problems can be fixed. Now we go to the options. Very surprised at the whole. Nobody chose option one, 21% option two, 54% option three, 25% option four. So two and four, a good almost half of the audience went for two and four. Now, while translating, the Indian and Westerner face the same challenges, but they have different skill profiles, and the former has the advantage. Are they saying anywhere that both of them face the same challenges? Nowhere anybody is saying that both of them are facing the same challenges. They say that each person has a different skill, so the same challenges goes. And secondly, the big idea is that the translation is better left to Indians. Former has the advantage, disadvantage. It is clearly stating that Indians should do the translation. It is nowhere said that the challenges are this thing. Anand, Arnav, we are looking at these tech. We've not covered these techniques in the previous masterclass. Usually, these techniques we use in the video solutions, and this is the first masterclass for it. Yeah. Now, that is where the first one goes. Second one, as preserving cultural meanings is the essence of literary translation, Indians' knowledge of local culture outweighs the initial disadvantage of lower fluency in English. Now, those who have chose this, what you call this particular option in terms of the particular question. Now, if you look at this option, you have to look at what is the reason that they're giving. Is the reason anywhere that cultural? Yes. Are they saying that preserving cultural this thing is the essence, or are they saying that between two, which is a problem that can be fixed? They're saying that lack of language skills is an easier problem to fix rather than the other problem, because cultural issue cannot be fixed, right? So the reason is not that cultural preserving cultural is the essence, but they're saying that the other problem is easier to fix. So that too is completely changing it to mean that cultural this thing is the most important thing. Hence, Indians' knowledge of local culture outweighs the initial disadvantage. So initial disadvantage, it is not necessarily that later they will get better, right? So even if you keep option two, suppose you decided that okay, option two is a good option, keep that, but don't commit to it and read the next option. What does the next option say? Indian translators should translate Indian text into English. The most important idea that this translation has to be left to Indians. This is very, very clearly mentioned here. It is not mentioned in the other two options. They're just saying Indians have an advantage. This outweighs it. The main idea is that leave this job to Indians. That part, option three, is starting very, very clearly. Indian translators should translate text into English as their work is less likely to pose cultural problems, which are harder to address than the quality of language. So it's also giving the reason that quality of language is easier to remedy than this. Right now, if you see in this option, they're doing a very, very, very interesting thing. One of the things in options is paraphrasing. If the sentence is saying X is better than Y, the option might say Y is inferior to X. The passage is saying this is easier to remedy than that, whereas this is saying that this is less likely to pose cultural problems which are harder to address than that. This is easier to remedy, that is harder to address. If you see, easier to remedy is converted into harder to address. Right. So they've exactly paraphrased X is greater than Y, they've converted to Y is less than X. Last one, Westerners might be good at gaining reasonably, 25% chose option 4. I was a bit shocked by this, that Westerners might be good at gaining reasonable fluency in new languages. Are they anywhere saying that Indians cannot learn new languages and Westerners are better at learning new languages? Absolutely not. They're saying that English skills they have better. Not that in general Westerners can have fluency in picking up new languages. So that itself is a distortion of the idea, which is why option 4 is wrong. Yeah. So important thing to learn from this particular question is that the idea will be expressed in different ways, sometimes exactly mentioning it in a different, opposite, approaching the logic from the opposite end. Instead of X greater than Y, they'll say Y is less than X. Next question. this text is slightly tougher compared to the previous text, right? And it seems like there is no one, there are a couple of ideas, but not like a very clear thing in the previous passage where it's saying that Indians should translate. It's describing a concept. What are they saying? The one big idea is that language is slippery. It is not like a very, very clear boundary is there, right? And the meaning of words arises from the use of them, right? So the first, this thing is language and meanings of words are not fixed, but they're often changing. The next this thing is that there are two kinds of this where next the idea there are two kinds of doctrines. One is meaning in use and second is a dictionary meaning. So what are they saying? Meaning in use is that a word gets used in many different ways, and as it's getting used in different ways, then the people who are making the dictionary, the lexicographer, takes the meaning from that exchange and then says this is the dictionary definition. We are not only starting with the dictionary definition, but after a point, the based on how the word is getting used, dictionary definitions are also made. For example, if you look at the word chill, right? Technically, what you call the meaning of the word means reduce the temperature of something. You chill some water or whatever, or chill some wine in the fridge, right? But the meaning of chill predominantly has become to relax, right? And to have a good time and relax, right? So that is what they mean by this whole thing. There are two ways to understand meanings of words: meanings in use and dictionary meanings, which are fixed. So what is the main this thing? In reality, meanings are more fluid. They arise out of exchange, which are then set into dictionary definitions. They're saying that people start using words in a particular manner. Maybe the original meaning might be there in whatever way, but that once people start using words in a particular manner, it then gets set into a dictionary. Now let's look at the options. Abhishek, and the previous this thing, it is very clear said that for Indian translation of Indian books should be left to Indians is clearly stated in the last this thing. Yeah. Okay, 76% for option 3, 1, and the rest is split between the rest of the options. Now, first option, dictionary definitions are like gold standards, artificial, theoretical, dogmatic. Right now, again, so much importance to just this one part about saying at the saying it's like pinning a butterfly. It's saying that word the butterfly will fly around. You're pinning and saying this is the only meaning, but to convert that into artificial, theoretical, and dogmatic is saying maybe way too many things than are intended. Actual meaning of words is their free exchange value. So the meaning use is mentioned, but the key part, that the meanings are fluid and arise out of exchange, and then they are set into dictionary. That idea is completely missing. That out of the use, you take the meanings and then we say, "Acha, this word, people use it to mean this." So that part is missing. And saying artificial, theoretical, dogmatic is a bit saying way more things than required. Next, language is already slippery. Given this, accounting for meaning use will only exacerbate the problem. This saying that actually this meaning use thing is all is that looking at this meaning and use in a negative thinking, it's in a negative way, saying that it will only exacerbate the problem. So it's not going to exacerbate the problem. This so sometimes when we look at these are actual cat questions only, but the people who are making the questions also use incorrect English. It's not exasperate, cannot be it. It has to be exacerbate. So I don't know how they even came up with the question with an incorrect meaning. So that is why, so it is nowhere saying that the meaning in use is a negative thing at all. So whereas option 2 is saying meaning in use is negative. So this goes. Meaning is dynamic, definitions are static. Very, very easily, what you call, in a very short phrase, it captures that. The meaning in use theory helps us understand that the definitions of words are culled from their meaning in exchange and use, and not vice versa. It's capturing that last part pretty well, that you're taking the definition of words from how they are used and then they are fixed. It's not that people are reading the dictionary first and then deciding to know how to use it. So this option you can keep. You can go to the last one. The meaning of words in dictionaries is clear, fixed, and less dangerous and ambiguous. Then this thing that these are more dangerous, this is less dangerous. There is no idea of anywhere in the passage that this is more dangerous and safer, and that is less dangerous and unsafe. So that idea of danger is not there. So that goes. So that's the only reason why you'll keep option 3. It captures the whole thing pretty well. Yeah, I think geologists are somebody saying that the word Riz first became popular among Gen Z and then Oxford added it to the dictionary. Yeah, I think Riz was a short form of charisma, and then it's become like a word that everybody uses. Yeah, every year there are new words added to the dictionary. This is an easy but still interesting question to look at in terms of the options. Aman, option 3 is the answer to the last question. Yeah. This short paragraph, right? Brazil's growth rate has been low, yet most people are saying their financial situation has improved and they expect it to get even better. So clearly, one key idea is coming in, that for while the economy is low growth is low, things are better for most Brazilians. And then they're giving the reasons for the same. Right now, they're giving all the reasons for the same. What are the reasons? Because of rising what you call rising incomes, higher minimum wages, low unemployment, inequality is falling, and middle class is growing. Right? Why are things good? Because of all of these reasons. And at the end, they're saying, but things are still bad for the poor. They get uh, low rate of growth can even mean no. Low rate of growth cannot mean negative growth. No, that cannot mean negative growth, because that would be a recession. Yeah. But things are still bad for the poor. They get the least return for their taxes. So out as a share of the income that people are giving as part of the tax, they're getting the least return in terms of government services. Right? At some point of time, I remember Warren Buffett said that as a percentage of income, his secretary pays more tax than him. Warren Buffett is one of the richest people in the world because he, out of his income, he can has a lot of loopholes to save taxes. But his secretary does not have as many loopholes because she can't do much investment, so she pays a bigger percentage, it seems. Yeah. So we have the three ideas here. Now let's look at the options. Yep. 69% option 4, but still a good 31% went for the other options. Option 1, economic reforms have benefited many Brazilians, but they're unaware of the impending problems from rising inequalities in their society. Now, anywhere are they saying that impending problems means problems are going to happen in their this thing? Is anywhere in the passage have they said that there are going to be problems? No. So, which is why option 1 goes. With rising incomes and falling employment, most Brazilians are being misled into thinking that their economy is doing well. Anything about the poor here, about the rate or about the taxes that they pay, about not getting benefits? No. Is there anywhere they're saying that people are getting fooled into this thing? No, you're not asked to comment on the passage, right? You're not asked to comment on the passage. You're only asked to summarize the passage. Has the passage anywhere said that people are being misled? No. They're just saying there is low growth, but many people feel they have benefited. This is not correct. This is not false. This is the bogus growth. Anything of that sort? No. So you're not asked to comment. It is not. It is not mentioning the poor also, which is where option 2 goes. Good economic indicators have masked the unfair taxation of the poor. This in a way summarizes it, but that is likely to destabilize the Brazilian economy in the next few years. Anywhere is there a prediction saying that in the next few years it will get destabilized? Absolutely no. Right? Most Brazilians feel that they have benefited from recent economic events, which is option X. Despite low growth, things are better for most Brazilians. So that is mentioned. Y has been completely eliminated in this, the reasons why things are better, right? But this last part, Z, but still things are bad for the poor, and they continue to get a raw deal in terms of being dealt unfairly, that they're paying the highest share of the taxes and they're getting the least of the government services. That has been condensed into a single line called dealt unfairly. So if you look at it, X, Y, and Z are three of them, only two are there. This thing of the reasons for it, so just like the process sometimes can be ignored, if so they can choose to ignore the process, sometimes the detailed reasons also can be ignored. Suppose there is another option which is saying these two but also mentioning the reasons, then between 4 and that option you should choose that, right? But if there is only one option, and if other three options have some blatant mistakes, choose the option even though one of the ideas is missing. Yeah. Now, a few questions that people have been asking. One, on easier questions, which are usually the science ones, the language is easy to decipher. You can make your XYZ using sentences from the passage itself. Options are not closed. You can easily eliminate incorrect options based on the presence or absence. So easily you can summarize, you can use the words from the passage itself and you can get that done. What happens on tough questions? Language is dense. So your main job when you're reading this paragraph before going in is like, how do I convert this into simple short language, which are the main ideas? So there is elaboration of an idea where I'm giving things more and more in detail. And there is that key idea. For example, the key idea that language is not fixed. The meaning is dynamic, right? So they said meanings are dynamic. So what you call dictionary, the dictionary is dynamic, whereas meanings are, the dictionary is static, whereas meanings are dynamic. So convert, but did they go into say, they didn't get into the rest of the details. So when you're reading a paragraph, just look at how can I use, identify the key thing in very, very few words. And this you have to do it for yourself as you're reading it. Maybe don't wait till you're reaching the end. As I'm telling you a story, I'll give you a sentence, I'll tell you something, and I'll give you a few additional information regarding that. Right. So your job is to, as you're reading, just isolate. This is this is how I can simplify it. Right? Correct options end up having only the main idea. You might not even have ideas X and Y at times. It can be only Z. So it is very, very important to look at what is the key idea over here. Just like in this last sentence, last paragraph, the key idea was that despite the fact that many people are feeling good for these reasons, the poor are still suffering. Life has not improved for them. So that becomes the key part for this, right? So that now somebody had asked a question, sir, how about abstract passages? What do we do with such passages? Now, the thing is that you need to solve, say, 6 to 8 questions. Right? Now, it can be that the two summary questions that you get, both are abstract in your slot, and maybe you have to leave them eventually if you're not able to understand. Right? So beyond a point, if the text is very tough and you're not able to make sense, then you'd have to, you try to do your best, but if you're stuck between two options, you have no other option but to leave it. It does not mean that because it, just like RC, it does not mean that every single summary question you have to attempt. There will be a question which you have to let go even on VA. Right. Sometimes it can be both summary questions, sometimes it can be one, sometimes it can be another question. Two summaries might turn out to be easy. So in your approach, you have to be fairly flexible in terms of finally choosing whether to answer or not. Options typically on tough questions also tend to be super short, with many elements being condensed using different words. So you cannot just say what you call let me eliminate this because it is here. Janvi, as we discussed, 25 minutes for RC and 15 minutes to VA. So we have clearly discussed the division, number of questions and everything in that last mile to catch session. Recording is available on you. Somebody wanted to look at easy questions. Language becomes easy. You can easily use the word from the passage itself and make an XYZ. Options are not closed. You can eliminate incorrect based on the presence of absence. So this is there, this is not there. Yeah. Now, Tushar, last two options. Now you have to do, if you're stuck between the last two options, as I keep saying that, you'd have to look at two things. One, are all of the three present or not? Two, are they introducing a wrong idea or are they introducing an idea which is not there? You have to ask yourself that question. Are they saying this? So when you're stuck between two options, which it is naive, are they saying it is naive? Right. So you have to do that particular reasoning when you're stuck between two options. Okay, this one has XYZ. This does not have, this has all three, but the logic is incorrect. So ask yourself that question as to what is the difference between these two options? Is this thing said or am I adding additionally, am I taking it too far? Yeah. Now we go to the next type, jumble paragraphs. I'll be doing a few 5 option questions also, because if we do 5 option questions, then maybe 4 option questions will be easy. Right. So Chanvi says, in case the parasummary question abstract starts in the early only or language is difficult, should we attempt it? No, Janvi, if you're not able to understand what the passage is, it's better to leave it, because you'd rather save that time elsewhere. Because if you don't understand the text, because if it's so dense, it does not make sense to go ahead, right? Options might seem easy. Maybe read it fast and see, but So the only thing is, in couple of SIMCATs, try to read it fast. Okay, I'm not understanding. I'm not going to waste too much time. If the options are easy, I'll mark. And if I'm always getting it right in that sense, and you can use them. Arnav, on any VA question, Mudit, no way you can read options first in para summary. Absolutely no way. Right? There is that it doesn't do anything for you. Right? Arnav, for any question, it's roughly 2 minutes per question, whether it's para summary or anything. I don't think there is, between 1 minute 30 seconds and 2 minutes. So roughly it is 2 minutes per question for every question type. Is what I would say. If you read faster, then maybe you feel you can cut it down, but otherwise, on average, it's the same. Right? We move to jumble paragraphs. Again, the skill being tested, ability to understand logical and structural relationship between sentences. So that is the key skill that is being tested. Usual process, read each sentence, try to form links along the way, focus on reading all sentences to get full information and then sequence. So this can be a big temptation that I will read everything, right? And once I read it, I'll get a full idea, right? But this will end up taking a lot of time. This process can take a lot of time. So it involves rereading the previous sentence. You'll read first thing and then you'll get an idea, then you'll reread. First one, as I discussed in the last mile to cat session also, I discussed that jumble paragraph was the easiest question type. It's the oldest question type that has been there on the cat verbal ability. So I took the cat the first time in the year 2000. Even then it was there. So the moment So Divyanshi is saying a good question. Para summary, 25% option. This is 1 and 24. We can do the probability part, right? But we know in reality it doesn't work in terms of probability, because 1 and 4, 25, between the two options, it's like saying you're saying each option is equal. Technically, mathematically, it is equal. But if you're eliminating two easy options, it's like taking out the. I've discussed this in what you call the last man to cat as well. Suppose you have a cricket team and I'm sending batsman 11 to 5, 11 to 6 to bat first. And then I'm sending batsman 5 to 1. You get the first 5 batsmen out. Do you think your job is 50% done? No, because you've removed the tail, right? Your chances, that is when the hard part starts. That logically, would you think that, okay, if I take half the wickets of the tail enders, is my job 50% done? No. Alternatively, also, if I take the first 6 wickets, I know that bulk of my job is done. Now I have to polish off these people fast. Right? Similarly, there are 1 in 24 ways to answer a jumbled paragraph question. But if it's a very, very easy question, then it won't take so much time itself, right? So let's not get too much into the probability bit. Right? So as I said, I was looking at why did this move from being a tough question type to an easy question type to a relatively tricky or tough question type? Because earlier there were options and then there were no options. So I decided to look at, if it was easy with options, what was the method we followed then? When there were options, the options would typically be 3142, 3124, 4132, 4123. So straight away we know that the starting sentence has to be 3 or 4. So we would first figure that out, is it 3 or 4? Once we know that, we will go to the rest of this thing. We are not trying to look at each sequence. Similarly, that's why I thought that, okay, my first job is to see which one starts. And then after, as I'm reading, looking for links. Because if the starter is fixed, then the option is taken care of. I don't need to read the whole thing. So as I'm reading this whole thing, yeah, in that case, that's the case in Snap where they give options, right? So sort the sequence into one of two categories where you figure out, can this be a starter or is this a follower, right? When you read the sentence, it's a starter or follower. A starter is obvious that as a starter, it will be obvious it's a sentence that begins the paragraph. So what qualifies a starter? Qualities will a starter have? It will introduce an idea, term, topic, concept, issue, or theme. It will thus be at a very, very macro level and not at a micro level. The starter will be as generic as possible. It will have absolutely no pronouns, he, her, this, that, or reference to another sentence or idea, or logical like but, thus, hence, after, that, then. So it will have no reference to other sentences. Any sentence that has any of the things listed in the previous point is a follower and not a starter. Any references such as this to something, some other sentence, definitely is not a starter and a follower. So the first thing to look at is, can a sentence be a starter or is it a follower? Next, look for links. Now, if you know that it's not a starter, you will always get clues as to how is it linked to another sentence. So as you're reading, your task as you move to the next sentence is to identify links between sentences using these clues. Okay, this has to follow this. Common links are what? Noun link. A sentence is a follower since it uses the pronouns such as his, her, this, that. It means that this sentence is linked to another sentence, and you have to find out which is a sentence that is telling you who this person is. Right? So this sentence has to always follow that. Temporal link is a series of events that after, hence, therefore, later, before. So you know that here it's not therefore, hence, after, before. It's a time sequence. So you know that between those two sentences there's a time sequence. Next sort of link is what? A list. Firstly, secondly, thirdly. So that's a list. It's very rare that you'll have a list, but you need to be. Right? The third link is a logical link. When there is no other link, there is only a logical link. Sometimes you have clues. If, then, well, but, hence, thus. So those are hints for logical links, right? So you're reading whether a starter and follower and then looking for links. Arrange the links for coherence. Now, at the end of step 2, you will always know what is the starter sentence and a couple of links. For example, 3 is the starter, and you know that 1 has to follow 3, 3 1 is a link, and 4 2 is a link. Straight away, you know that it has to be 3 1 4 2. If 3 is a starter and 1 has to follow 3, and 4 2 is a link, you know 3 1 4 2, you don't need to sequence again. Don't waste time again sequence and trying to reread. Easy question, nikal gaya, get over. On a tougher question, you will need to do the sequence using a starter and one link, which you should always be able to find. Sometimes it can be that on a tough question, 3 is the starter and 4 2 is the link. 1, you do not know where to fit. So you have to figure out whether it is what. In this case, it can be what? 3 is the starter and 4 2 is a link. It can be 3 1 4 2 or 3 4 2 1. Then you have to sequence and see. Let's do an easy question. I'll be going option by option. So we'll do this first, and for the next ones, I'll leave it for you to do. Right? Look at this. Don't forget in this whole thing that you have to read the meaning of the sentence as well. Yeah. This is not a starter because of the word thus. They're saying self-management is thus defined as an individual ability to manage treatments when living with a chronic condition. Next. There is a small typo, is it? Sorry, there's no typo. Eventually, I'll deal with that. This is a possible starter. Most people with progressive diseases like dementia prefer to have control over their own lives and healthcare as long as possible. It's giving you a generic introductory statement. It can be a possible starter. Clearly, 2 and 3 has a link. Most people with progressive diseases prefer to have control. Having control means this. That means 2, 3 have a link. Next one. This has to follow 1 because this is not talking about self-management, but this is talking about the next self-management support, right? So we know 2 is a possible starter. We know 2, 3 is a link, and 4 has to follow 1, right? So we know 2, 3, 4 has to follow 1. So it becomes 2, 3, 1, 4. Yeah. So we don't need to again sequence the whole thing and read what is happening. Right? 2, 3, 1, 4 becomes a link. For the next quest, for the questions that are coming ahead, I'll leave it for you to do. Option one, the process of handing down implies not a passive transfer, but some contestation in defining exactly what is to be handed down. Now, here, one of the important things of a starter is that you will exactly have an idea about what this paragraph is about. You will not have an idea of what is this topic. You'll have a very, very clear idea as to what this topic is about. Right? Now, option one, the process of handing down implies a passive transfer. You don't know what is this, is it that? I have no idea. Now, option two, wherever Western scholars have worked on the Indian past, the selection is even more apparent and inventing of a tradition much more recognizable. Even more apparent, inventing more recognizable. Now, the moment I'm saying even more understandable, even more, I know that there is some, this is even more problematic, but more problematic compared to what? Right? So I know this cannot be a starter because even more problematic, even more apparent makes it linked to something else. Right? Go to the next one. Nishant has a good question. Can one be an abstract starter? Nishant, even though something is abstract as an idea, for example, it can be you exactly know what is this about. If this option is a very good, this question is a very good illustration of that. So what does option C say? Every generation selects what it requires from the past and makes its innovations some more than others. So they're saying every generation is selecting something from the past and makes its innovations. Some generation maybe do that more, generations do more than others. So this can be a starter that is very, very clear, right? And in this selection, and you know that three has to come before two because they're saying that when Western scholars have worked on this, selection is even more apparent. So what are they selecting from the past? What is more important? What is not? That is what option two is. This thing, so that some things are being and some things are being changed. So two definitely has to follow three. Need not necessarily be immediately, but somewhere after. That much I know here. Go to the next one. It gets even better. It is now a truism to say that traditions are not handed down unchanged but are invented. Now, three is saying every generation selection select from the past. But what are we talking about here? What are we selecting from the past? It is now a truism to say it's an article, it is now a truism. So now does not mean that it's immediately a follower. It is now a truism to say that traditions are not handed down unchanged but are invented. So it's not like we're blindly taking down tradition but invented. So this whole selection and everything is about what they're actually giving you one more. This also can be a starter since it introduces the idea of what is being this thing and what is being handed down. Now, you know, one more thing. It is now a truism to say that traditions are not handed down but are invented. Now, this process of handing down is not a passive transfer. You know, four and one is a link, right? But there is some contestation. Now we reach the last one. This is the most, important, this thing. What you'd have to look at is that in terms of, say, introducing an idea, I will always, one important thing I feel the biggest trap in jumble paragraphs or in this whole missing sentence is that looking for a concluding statement. Don't look for a concluding statement, right? Because this is not a summary setup, right? So how do they take a jumble paragraph? They're taking a paragraph and they're only going from start to end in a sequence, right? So all paragraphs usually start generic and go specific. The moment we are wanting to look for a concluding statement, it will always seem like, अच्छा ये end में अच्छा लगेगा, पर किसको अच्छा लगेगा? आपको अच्छा लगेगा, right? Now it is better to have these links. Now if I look at this, we are saying 4 is a better starter than this because it's saying that this selection from the past, what are we selecting from? What is getting selected? Is it everything from the past? Are we talking about clothes? Are we talking about technology? What are we talking? 4 is introducing what is getting passed on and what is that this thing, which is what tradition. 5 is saying just as life has death as its opposite, so is tradition by default the opposite of innovation. So tradition is always the opposite of innovation. So this is giving you an even more generic statement. So always choose the more generic statement as the starter, not at the end. This is saying, this is introducing the idea of tradition because it is prefacing tradition with life as death, life and death. It is not talking about traditions being handed down. It is introducing the idea of tradition. Always look at where is an idea getting introduced, not concluded, where it's getting introduced. 4 is mentioning traditions in action. Traditions are not handed down. But 5 is introducing the idea of tradition. Just as life has death as its opposite, so is tradition by default. It's introducing the idea of tradition here, right? So we have this introducing the idea of tradition. So immediately after it, it has to say, it is now a truism to say that traditions are not handed down, but are invented. So you have 5, 4. Now, handing down, we know, is linked to 1 because the process of handing down implies this. So you have 5, 4, 1, and you have what? 3 and 2 as a link. So you have 5, 4, 1, you have 3, 2 as a link. 5, 4, 1, 3, 2 as a link. Does it make sense to start with 3 and 2 and then go to 5, 4, 1? Does not make any sense because 5, 4, 1 is very, very generic. But if we go in this option, just as life has opposite, so is tradition default opposite of innovation. It's now a truism to say that traditions are not handed down, but are invented. Traditions are not handed, it's invented. Process of handed down implies not a passive transfer, but some contestation in defining what is to be handed down. Every generation selects what it's from the past that needs to be done. Whenever scholars have worked on the Indian past, selection is even more apparent than invention. Yeah. So big learning is 5, 4, 3, 1, 2. Okay. 5, 4, 3. Now, the process of handing down. Whenever I am introducing a concept, the related concept ideally should come immediately after it. So Vijayan is saying, why not 5, 4, 3, 1, 2? Because 4 is saying traditions are not handed down, and 1, that process of handing down has to immediately follow 4. Otherwise, once you're getting 1, 3 in, that process of handing down is going, right? But exactly what is getting handed down, and then 3, it says that every generation selects what it requires and some more than the others. Yeah. So always, but isn't 5 a different idea because it's saying tradition has no innovation, but we later know that it is invented. It's saying just as, so it's saying tradition by default is the opposite of innovation. Now, where will you fit 5, for example, right? This is introducing, why not 5, 4, 1, 2, 3 now? Divyanshi says, why not 5, 4, 1, 2, 3? Wherever scholars have worked on the Indian past, the selection is even more this thing. Now, whenever I'm introducing the concept, now this concept of selection is even more apparent. So before 1, is this concept of selection being introduced, Divyanshi, anywhere? 1 is not, 1 is, sorry, 5, 4, you're saying? Why not 5, 4, 1, 2 and 3? Yeah. 2 is talking about selection directly as if we know what selection is, because it's saying the selection is even more apparent. What selection are we talking about? 3 is actually defining that selection. Every generation selects what it wants from the past. Right. Now, I know that it can be said previously, but some contestation in defining what exactly to be handed down. So that handing down is selection. Handing down and selection are two separate things, but it is also this thing to say that it's even more apparent. Yeah. Rohan says it's easier to solve after reading all sentences. Rohan, it can be easier to solve after reading all sentences, but it will end up taking more time, right? You will end up making more time. But here, what am I saying? You're just having starting or follower, right? And you're saying, oh, this can be a starter. Okay, this seems like a starter, and you're getting links. So along the way, on tough question, you might need to read the whole thing again. After you read everything, only it will make sense. But at least you'll know the links very, very clearly, right? If we made the link, we know that 2 has to follow 3. What is getting selected? So you know that 3, 2 is a link. And 4 is introducing handing down. And 1 is saying the process of handing down implies not a transfer. So 1 has to follow 4. So you're clearly getting 4, 1 and 3, 2 as links, right? And even if you look at 4 as a starter, you have 4, 1, 3, 2, right? So now where does 5 go? Does 5 go at the end or 5 go at the beginning? It will still make your job easier. Yep. So big learning from this is don't try to look at a concluding sentence, because in your head you will conclude it like you will put a sheet over the whole thing, say yeah, last mein acha lag raha hai. Yeah. So don't try to conclude, because in your head you'll feel that some sentences which are very generic statement will this thing. Try to look at as many questions as possible. Yeah. Adra says, I understood the sequence, but wanted to know how can we consider 4 as a better starter compared to 3, as it's saying now is a truism. Now, for example, use it, Adra, look at it, I can explain it in Hindi, saying that Ajkal, this has become a truism. That Ajkal sabko pata hai, tradition is not. So it is not a time sequence. Yeah. After the session will go on till about say 9:15, and after that a few questions, right? And more importantly, is now so now is not a temporal link in this, right? It is now a truism to say that traditions here, and because if you because tradition, it what is getting selected and those things are still vague. Yeah. Now, next one. It's a very interesting question. Those who understood the concept properly, for them this will be the easiest question. Try to sequence this on your own. I won't give you the answer. Give me your answers. 4152354312. 52413. Okay. First one. The study suggests that the disease did not spread with such intensity, but that it may have driven human migrations across Europe and Asia. First thing, it says the study and the disease. So you need to know what is the study and what is the disease. So immediately before this, now one important thing of links is that suppose I want to know this, and the sentence says the study suggests that. That means the sentence preceding this should be having the study mentioned. This is a very important thing about pronouns. Suppose I am saying, "Acha, what you call." Uh, uh, what do you call a big data analysis on something revealed this, and then the next sentence says the study. So I should always use the pronoun as close as possible to the noun, right? I cannot use it later. So that is very important, that before one, immediately the study should be mentioned for sure, because it's saying the study suggests that the disease, and disease should definitely be there. Now, the oldest sample came from an individual who lived in Southeast Russia about 5,000 years ago. Okay, it says now we don't know which sample, is this. The ages of the skeletons correspond to a time of mass exodus. From which skeletons are these? We don't know. So I don't know where these skeletons came from also. Next, in the analysis of fragments of 101 Bronze Age skeletons for the sequence, the bacterium that causes the disease, 7 tested positive. Now, in the analysis of fragments that's tested for the disease, that bacterium. Now, here you clearly know that this analysis of fragments is nothing but the study. So you clearly know that after these skeletons only, everything else has to come, has to precede 1, 2, and 3, because it's saying this is the study, and it is saying that 101 skeletons were there from the 101 fragments of this thing, from where and that causes this 7 tested positive. But we know that 4 is not the starter. Why do we know 4 is not the starter? Because you don't know what the disease is, right? And 5 is giving you the disease. DNA from Bronze Age human skeletons indicate that the Black Plague could have emerged as early as 3000 BC, long before the epidemic that swept through Europe in mid 1300s. So this has to be the starter. Now, because this is the skeletons, this is referring to this, because it's saying the bacterium that causes the disease. Which disease? It has to be mentioned immediately before that, hence 4 comes. The study suggests that the disease is not bad. Which study? The study is the analysis of the fragments. So 5, 4, and 1 have to be linked in sequence, because whenever I'm referring to something, it has to come immediately before it. So some people are saying 5, 4, 2. The oldest sample came from an individual who lived in Southeast Russia about 5,000 years ago. And so this is this thing. In the analysis, but the bacterium that causes the disease, now if you're looking at the link, so we have 5, 4, and 1. Now we have 3 and 2. So 5 has to start, 4 has to precede. Now someone may say that oldest sample came from an individual who lived in Southeast Russia about 5,000 years ago, right? Now this is the oldest sample that they're saying. Right? Now this is just giving you one piece of information, but it's not actually telling you anything about what are their. Yeah. This thing, the 101 bronze skeletons are mentioned. The oldest sample came from this thing. In the analysis of the fragments, this last part, the ages of the skeletons correspond to a time of mass exodus from today's Russia and Ukraine into Western Europe and Central Asia, suggesting that a pandemic could have, what you call, driven these migrations. Now, the reference to the ages of the skeletons. Now, if I'm going with 5, let's look at why not 5142. Why 541? For the simple reason that this is introducing the what you call epidemic. That reference to that bacterium is immediately coming here. What is the study? That is one. Now, what about 3 and 2? Yeah, 54132 is the answer, by the way. Right? So that's where we're going from. Now, this age of the skeleton, suppose I choose 5, 2, 4, 1, and 3. The age of the skeleton right at the end is because I'm not referring to the ages. Again, the ages reference is happening quite later. So always keep things very, very clear in these links. If I'm mentioning something in a sentence, ideally that link has to be there immediately next to it, right? I'm mentioning the ages. Now, if I have 1 and after that I'm coming to 3, the study suggests that disease did not with such intensity, but in given human migrations, ages of this doesn't correspond to a time. So because of that oldest wala part, that is, you would have gone with 5413 if the sequence is not there. Yeah. So 5 has to start. Now, here, if you look at 5 has to start, 4 has to precede 1, 2, and 3. So, and 1 has to immediately follow 4. So, 5, 4, 1 has to be a sequence because 4 and 1, I'm saying this is the analysis, and after the analysis, this comes in. So, finally, we are only referring to one thing, which is 2. Now, why should 2 come after 1? Can anybody give me reasons for that? Why should 2 come later? 3 and 2, why should they come later? Oldest sample came from an individual who lived in Southeast Russia, right? That is the oldest sample. It's the most specific point, right? But where is Russia being mentioned? Before this, there is no reference to Russia. And that idea of migration from where? So 541 are talking about the idea of migration. Oldest sample came from a person who lived in Russia. The ages correspond to a time where mass exodus from today's Russia into Ukraine went, right? So the reference to Russia and the time is what is there in 2, and hence after 2, 3 comes in because it's talking about this information. How does something come in, right? So Jalad says 3 refers back to the migrations. Yeah, 3 refers back to the migrations. That's right. Yeah. So this is a fairly tricky question. Now, one of the things that you should remember, right? I think this is very, very important, is that जब किसी ने ये पैसेज लिखा था, the person who wrote the passage did not know that ये पैसेज बड़ा होके जंबल पैराग्राफ बनेगा, right? They did not know that. So nobody has made these passages for that. The people who said the cat directly take a passage from somewhere and they jumble it and says sequence. Now that person has not always written this in the sense that this has to be a watertight thing, which is a question, right? Yeah, 421. See, the thing is, we clearly know that 5, 4, if we look at this in a simple this thing, yeah, why not 54132? This right at the end, the oldest sample came from an individual who lived in Russia, South, as this thing. That seems like a piece of information that is just there at the end, right? But that information, for it to make sense, what happens with that information? This is option that coming before 3 makes sense. That is why 54132, because that's just, sorry, 54123. Why 1, 2? See, I'm not looking at 1, 2. I'm looking at 541 as a link. This introduces the disease. This refers to the disease and introduces the study. This refers to the study. So I've used 541 as a link because disease, reference to disease. Study, reference to study. Hence 541. That's the strongest link for 541, right? Because it's clearly referring to something. Now I have 2 and 3. Now, if I look at 2 and 3, 2 says the oldest came from an individual as a standalone information from Russia. So it's like an additional piece of information. And then option 3 is saying that this is why the migration would have happened to Russia around this time. Yeah. Arushi, I'm not looking at 1 following 2 as a sequence. I'm looking at 2 and 3 as a, sorry, 2 and 3 as a sequence. Yeah. Is that clear? I don't think anyone gave the correct answer as 5, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So yeah, I know we can, we can put 2 right at the end. The oldest sample came from a person right at the end. You know, if you're thinking like, acha, theek hai, ye end mein aa sakta hai, ye study mein this thing, oldest sample came. Now, with it, what happens, what is coming from that, you know, oldest sample, uh, is make sense of that information is getting made, is happening in 3. The ages of the skeleton correspond to a time of mass exodus from today's Russia and Ukraine into this, suggesting that a pandemic could have driven these migrations. Right? A pandemic could have started these migrations because the oldest one is from Russia and the ages correspond to a time of mass exodus. So if I'm looking at the skeleton, the skeletons correspond to a time when there was migration from Russia. Right? So what is the idea? I know that there is migration from Russia that happened. And I'm looking at this piece of information. What is this piece of information? We found that there was Black Plague, and the skeletons are indicating Black Plague. Studies have shown that 101 of these, they definitely causes this, 7 tested positive. The study, and what is the study? Such a disease did not spread with such intensity. It spread, but it may have driven. It was not like very, very fast, but it may have driven migration. So, and then the oldest sample is coming from there. All of this I'm linking with a historical fact that the ages correspond to, so during that time, there was a migration correspond to a time from Russia to India, suggesting that a pandemic. So we know that there was a migration. All of this 5, 4, 1, and 2 are suggesting that this migration was because of a pandemic. Yep. Is that clear? So 2 as the reason, 3 provides the reason for statement 2. Yes. So 5, 4, 2, and 1 are talking about the skeletons and the samples and everything. 3 is giving you parallel information apart from the analysis. Is that clear? Yeah. 3 is giving you a parallel this thing apart from the analysis, that all of this analysis, and if you look at the skeletons, it does correspond to a time when there was mass exodus from Russia and Central Asia to, from where, from today's Russia to the previous ones. Yeah. And Ukraine into Western Europe. Is that clear? 5, 4, 1, and 2 are all related to the study. 3 is referring to the study, but also using a new information saying that this time corresponds to a migration. Right? See, there will be a tough question. Better off, say, when you're reading this, to get rid of this. And also, if you look at it, I did a 5 sequence one, which is very, very tough. But if you do the sequencing and the starter fought over this thing, 4 question sentences become very, very easy. Right? Please remember that in a rush to execute the process in the shortest span of time, do not forget the most important thing, which is reading for meaning. It can happen that when you're trying to do this, you're forgetting meaning completely and just looking at links. Everything I've discussed so far in terms of, say, there has to be a certain amount of common sense also that you're using. You're not just directly saying there's a link and not this thing. Right? Most importantly, jumble paragraph has a tendency that you might end up getting stuck for time. I'll discuss the sequence to attempt VA later, but there is a tendency that you might get stuck in jumble paragraph, so don't ensure it. Now we'll come to possibly what I think is the easiest question type. Now this is a new question type. Only few questions are there. Overall, the actual CAT questions, not too many. Some like maybe around 10 to 12 questions. But all the 10 to 12 questions that I've done in last year, 2023, as well as 2022, all starts are easy. Right? Yes, I think that, if that's a very, very, those odd question types you'd have to maybe look at, as I said, some question types, you'll have to look at whether that so or therefore is being used in, therefore is very, very rare, but so can be used in a non-sequential sense. So let's not, the odd question will be that, but we, one of the things about CAT as an exam, as I said, is because these passages are not designed, that passage itself is not designed. What you need to look at is, I'll follow the process. The process helps me 8 out of 10 times or 9 out of 10 times. That is what I need to look at. Yeah. Now, missing sentence in paragraph, as I said, introduced in 2022, 3 slots there and 3 slots in 2023, totally not more than 12 questions. So very few. But all the 12 questions that I've solved tell me that this is the easiest question type of the lot. And let's look at it as to why it is so, right? And what's the process. So what's the skill being tested? Ability to understand, again, not very different from jumbled paragraph or odd sentence out or whatever, right? So the method I want to use, I've not given it a name, is that the before after method. So what does this before after method mean? Read the sentence and note down what has to come before and what can likely to come after the sentence. You read a sentence and you first figure out iske pehle definitely kya cheez discuss hona chahiye, what should definitely be come before this, and after this possibly this can come. For example, before can be introductory ideas. For example, sentence says this finding, then you know that the sentence has to come only after what this finding is has been clearly stated. Next, nouns. Sentence says they. Then you need to know this sentence has to come only after who this they they're talking about has been clearly mentioned. Right. So this you definitely need to know that, okay, before this I need to know that suppose this finding has been said by him or somebody or whatever. You need to know what the finding is and who the him is. Right. After is what? Supporting ideas. For example, the sentence says, this discovery helped explain many similarities. Then the missing sentence has to be followed by the similarities, right? After, read every sentence, don't go to try to fit, and just try to make a list of what is before, what is after, because this is the easiest question type. I am not going to solve this and make it easy for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, and yeah, what's the next method? Read the sentence in the sequence. Next step is looking for the before idea. Eliminate options that do not have the before idea preceding them. So option one, by this in this position, the before idea is not stated clearly, I can eliminate. So eliminate those options. If you're stuck with two options, then to figure out which one is a better position, suppose you're saying one can also be there and two can also be there, then use the after idea. Easy, because it's an easy question type. With before idea only 50% of the questions might are getting solved. If you're finding two options, one can also be there, two options, then look at the after idea, right? Let's look at this. I want you to make a clear note what should be before, what should be after. I'm not going to solve this question. I'm only going to show you before, after, and then before. Yes, Tushar, there is a good question. When we are not able to get the before idea, can we conclude it as a starting sentence? Absolutely, you can conclude it as a starting sentence. Just look whether one is given, option one is given right at the beginning, Tushar. Yeah, you'll see that that will usually happen. First question, how many befores are there in this? Tell me in the chat. What do you need to know? One thing before this sentence or two things? Yeah, that's important. You need to know two things. First one, what was years in the making? This was years in the making, but fast tracked during the pandemic. What was this phenomenon that was years in the making? Second part is he explained. Who is this he? Right. So before, you need some food philosophy, right? Because people started becoming more mindful about their food. So there has to be some food philosophy which has to get explained before this. And you need to know who this he is. So two pieces of information are absolutely a must. What can come after this? Think about what can come after. Whatever was fast tracked during the pandemic, what are the implications of that, or what are related developments, right? So whatever got fast tracked, what is the impact of this fast tracking, and what are the related developments, right? Or it can be why was it fast tracked, right? Now read the whole thing and then I'll release the poll. poll is really, really shocking, actually. I thought this is the easiest question ever. Okay. 18% option 2, 29% option 4, 5% option 1. Okay. We know that some food philosophy, and who is this reference to? He has to be there. For millennia, ghee has been venerated as a staple in the subcontinent diet, but it fell out of favor a few decades ago when saturated fats were largely considered unhealthy. But more recently, so definitely it's just telling us is that introducing any philosophy here, it is just saying that it fell out of favor. So something fell out of favor, but what is this new? It's not a food philosophy as such. And is there a reference to who the he is? No. So one is not your answer. But more recently, as the thinking around saturated fats is shifting globally, Indians are finding their way back to this ingredient so integral to their cuisine. Right now, this is very, very clearly saying that okay, Indians are finding their way back to this ingredient. That is fine, right? But is it telling you who this person he is? This was years in the making when people started being he explained. So two cannot be an option. So around say whatever number of people, 18% to mark option 2. How can I use the word he without saying who that person is? I cannot say it later for Karmakar. नहीं बाद में बोल रहे हैं ना sir Karmakar. That is English grammar doesn't work like that. You first mention the noun and then you mention the pronoun, right? So you come here for Karmakar, a renewed interest in ghee is emblematic of the return to the back to basics movement. So clearly, you're saying that I know who the person is and what is this philosophy that we're talking about, or what was years in the making that got fast tracked, a back to basics movement. This movement is also part of an overall trend towards slow food and everything. Now, this is what is most shocking for me, that after that, around 30% students marked 4, right? Because if you're looking at it in keeping with this movement philosophy, ghee can be produced locally, even at home, and has inextricable cultural ties. At a basic level, ghee is a type of clarified butter. Now, between this, why will I introduce this karmakar here again? 30% of the people who map option 4. If I'm saying karmakar and I have a reference to he, the pronoun should be close to the noun wherever I'm referring to. Here I've moved on to what is ghee and what is inheritized. Suddenly, why will I say in the middle, this was years in the making, was this thing? People started being more mindful about their food. Right. And then again, it goes to at a basic level, ghee is a type of this thing. Does it make any sense where I'm referring to ghee and the next sentence they're telling you what ghee is, and in the middle I'm going ahead and putting Mr. Karmakar, right? Do you need to do that? Right? Do you need to what you call lather Mr. Karmakar in ghee? उनको मतलब घी का एक सेंटेंस और दूसरे सेंटेंस के बीच में आपको कर्माकर को ढालना है क्या? Right? Niharika, this movement after Black 3 did not seem like there is a logical gap. This is a back to basics movement, right? This was years in the making, but fast track during the pandemic. This movement is part of an overall trend towards soul food. Yeah. Yes, became super easy because of Karmakar, because no proper noun is given in the sentence then, right? There is no proper noun. So the most important thing is think about that when I'm saying he, ideally that reference to that he should be in the sentence before, right? I cannot introduce 2, 3 different things in a sentence and then suddenly say I'm talking about he and you're saying that, he's saying that, right? This was years in the making, but fast track during the pandemic when people started being more mindful. This movement also is part of an overall trend, right? So what was years in the making? That reference, we had clearly decided that this, right, that this has to be defined, so that this definition is happening in the return to basics movement. Then this was years in the making. It is also part of the overall trend. right? Now, if you're keeping 4 here, why is it fast track during the pandemic? And then suddenly after that, why am I saying he is a type of clarified butter, right? So option 3, I thought this was easy, but I think people really complicated it. And I was a bit shocked that only 49% got this right. Yeah. I thought it will be close to 70%. Is this clear, right? About the pronoun thing and reference? Yeah. Let's look at the next sentence. When people learn socially from each other, they often learn without understanding why what they're copying, why and what they're copying, the beliefs and technologies and the know-how works, right? So they're saying that people are copying blindly and they do not know how this works or why they're doing this. This seems like a starting sentence because there is no reference, this thing, so it can be there. So it can be a generic starter, can be a starter. If there can be an introduction here, what will be the introduction be about? Suppose there can be an introduction. It can be an introduction about social learning. Why do humans do social learning? What is definitely going to come as an after? What should definitely come after this? Yep. Tell me in the options. Why do people do this? Because this is saying when people learn to do this, people often do it without understanding the why, what, know how works. They just blindly copy people. Why are they copying? All the reasons should have come after this. When because it's saying when people are doing this, people do not do this blindly without knowing the why, what, or the know-how, right? So why are they doing this? The reasons should come after this, right? Or the effects. Now we go to the options. Description of why and how social learning works. I hope on this one, you guys get it right. Yep. 63% option 2, 23% option 1, and say 14% in the rest. Yep. Now, the dual inheritance theory says that inheritance itself is an evolutionary system. It has variation. What makes us a new kind of animal and so different and successful as a species is we rely heavily on social learning to the point where socially acquired information is the second line of an inheritance, the first being our genes. So this is introducing, in a way, this is introducing social learning, right? So before I'm, and then the given sentence says when people learn socially from each other, they often learn this thing and understand. So this is introducing the idea that we have two kinds of inheritance, and that is why we are very unique. First is genetic, and the second is social learning. Right. So ideally, this can be a good introduction. So between 1 and 2, I would definitely choose 2. But if you want to keep one, keep one. Let's look at what should come after this. When people learn socially, they often learn without understanding why, what they're copying, the beliefs and behaviors, and technology and know how works. People are doing this social learning without understanding the why and what's of it, right? They're doing it. What should come after? The description of why and how social learning works should come after. Now, after this blank, what is coming in after 2? People tend to home in on who seems to be the smartest or the most successful person around, as well as what everybody seems to be doing. The majority of people have something worth learning. Right? When you repeat this process over time, you can get around the world cultural packages, beliefs, and behaviors. So, this why and how social working work, what is the process that is followed? That process is being described in the sentences after 2. So, if I'm caught between 1 and 2, it makes no sense to 3 and 4 straight away I can eliminate, because they're saying that what people seem to be doing, what everybody seems to doing. So, how do they copy? What are they copying and why are they doing? They're copying everybody else. So the elaboration of why people are copying and who they're copying is given after this. Why and how it works is being given here. So 3 and 4 are definitely ruled out, because after this sentence, what should come? That is coming here after 2. Now between 1 and 2, social learning, the why social, how social learning happens. Is it better if the sentence is here right at the beginning or right at the end? I know, many got confused because I said it can be an introductory sentence. Now, if you chose that this can be an introductory sentence, what did I say? Whenever you are caught between two options, look at the break the deadlock with the after, right? Now, when people socially learn from each other, they often learn without understanding what then this thing is. The dual inheritance theory says that. We know that after this, we need to learn how social learning works. Is this dual inheritance theory telling you how social learning works, or why people do, is it telling you that? It is telling you that people do social learning. It is introducing the idea of social learning, but it's not telling you why people do it or how people do it, right? It is telling you, and it's also introducing human beings also. Is the inheritance theory about human beings, by the way? No. It said that inheritance itself is an evolutionary system, and it says that human beings are different kind of animals because we have two different kind of inheritance, right? So inheritance is first a concept. Among the inheritance, social learning is introduced as one kind of inheritance, and then comes in social learning. So ideally, after this missing sentence, you should directly go into why are people doing this. If I'm saying that people, is dual inheritance theory the reason why people are copying without head or tail? No. People are copying without head or tail. People are looking at what most other people are doing. Who is the most successful person in the room? Who is the most smartest person in the room? Right. So always look at the after also. Between 1 and 2, if you were caught, you know that after this, ideally it should tell me why do people copy without head or tail? And 2 is giving you that answer, because after 2, it is clearly saying people copy the smartest person. Right. Yeah. So what's the option in this? Option 2. These were the easier questions. The next one I thought is slightly tricky or tough. But by and large, if you follow the process, you can see that is it advisable to keep a generic own starter if you find any? I don't commit to a possible starter. And all I'm saying is don't commit to it. Just say this can be a starter and leave it at that. Yeah. No, the next one. What is this sentence saying? This has meant a lot of uncertainty around what a wide scale return to office might look like, right? What a wide scale return might look like. So before this, definitely what you need to know, why is there is uncertainty and what kind of return to office is happening right now. These things you definitely should know, right? As to what is this, why has there been a lot of uncertainty. Return to office also has to be introduced, right? Return to office as a concept has to be introduced, and the reference to this cause of uncertainty definitely has to be mentioned. After is what? Implications or related developments of this around this uncertainty, right? Something related to this. What is the outcome of this uncertainty? What happens because of this? What if we are uncertain about what are this thing or whatever other related developments? This can be difficult or easy. Something tells me actually that it's an easier question. 51% option two and 21% option three, right? And then say 50, above 10% each for the rest. Now, bringing workers back to their desks has been a rocky road for employers and employees alike. The evolution of the pandemic has meant that the best laid plans have not materialized. The best laid plans for this thing has not, materialized. This has meant a lot of uncertainty around what a wide scale return might look like. They're saying that bringing workers back to their desks has been this thing, an evolution of the pandemic, that the best laid plans, but best laid plans have not materialized. But is it clearly telling me what is the cons of the uncertainty? Only saying that uncertainty around what? Uncertainty around large scale return to the office, right? So this is only saying so far that there has been the pandemic, plans have not materialized, right? Now, what about if I just park one? I'm not rejecting one, but I'm not accepting one as well. I'm just keeping it. The flow of workers back into the offices has been more of a trickle than a steady stream. So companies are bringing back workers has been a rocky road. Evolution of the pandemic has meant that best laid plans have not materialized. Flow of workers has been more of a trickle than a steady stream. So it's not like a steady flow, it's been a very small flow. This has meant a lot of uncertainty around what a wide scale return, because the flow is a small trickle and not a steady this thing. This is very, very clear that it's doing a pretty good job here in terms of saying that that the reason for the uncertainty is very, very clear, that it's not a steady stream, but it's like a, just a second. It's my problem with my PowerPoint. Just a second. Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I want the reasons for uncertainty around a wide scale return. With one, the wide scale return, what are the problems are not there. But here it's clearly saying the flow of workers back into offices has been more of a trickle than a steady stream. So this has meant a lot of uncertainty on what a wide scale return might look like. Two seems like a good option. I'll keep this. Yet, while plenty of companies are still working through their new policies, some employees across the globe are now back at their desks, whether on a full time or a hybrid basis. So, plenty of companies are still trying to figure it out. Then, some employees are across the globe are back at their desks, whether at full time or on hybrid basis. That much we know. That means that we are beginning to get some clarity on what return to office means, what's working as well as what is yet to be settled. Now, after three, suppose this sentence, this has meant a lot of uncertainties coming in three, is this is the place for it. Then immediately after that, how can you say that that means that we're beginning to get some clarity on what's working in this thing? And how can you say right at the end that this means there's a lot of uncertainty? So three and four, so those who mark three and four, there was no reason to mark three and four, because after three, immediately they're saying that we're beginning to get some clarity, right? So you can't get the clarity and then immediately say before that there is a lot of uncertainty. Right? Which is why 3 and 4 go out. Now that so 21% have marked option 3, you should check what is coming after that. Ideally, after that should be that this wide scale return, what is this thing? So after that, immediately cannot be clarity, right? And same thing for 4, right? Now, between 1 and 2, we know that which one is capturing the fact about reason for uncertainty better, if it comes here or if it comes here. Definitely if it comes here, because it says that the flow of workers into offices has been more of a trickle than a steady stream. Yeah. Is this clear? This one? Those who marked especially 3 and 4, you should have looked at what is following that. Yeah. And those who marked one, it's not, you're not entirely correct. One, not you're incorrect, but 1 and 2 were close options. You should have just looked at what this the uncertainty about. Has the uncertainty and has the return to office being very, very clearly, defined. Now we look at the last and what I think is the most trickiest question type, which is the incorrect sentence in context, or the odd one out. What are the skills being tested? Now, in all the previous things, we are looking at isolating a single. Why is it the trickiest? It's the trickiest because they are actually manipulating the passage to a very, very large extent, where they have actually said that this is out of context when the original passage is, it's clearly showing it in context also. And they're also removing reference like therefore, but, this, that, they're removing, right? So it's very, very tough because it's tricky. Because why is it tricky is there's another reason. I take 4 sentences or 5 sentences from the middle of a paragraph. The incorrect sentence, that one sentence will be either right at the beginning of the paragraph, slightly 2-3 sentences away, or 2-3 sentences later. So when you're taking 4 really close sentences and one sentence is just 2-3 sentences later or just 2-3 sentences above, if you're trying to sequence it, very, very likely that you will find the reason for it. So we are not even talking about 2-3 ideas. It's a very, very narrow single idea that you need to isolate. So what's the best way to look at it? Don't even try to sequence this. That's a huge waste of time. Don't even try to identify the link between options. Don't even try to form a coherent paragraph. So this is what people usually do, right? Read each option, try to sequence, identify the links, form a paragraph, and choose the sentence odd one out. This process is highly unproductive, both in terms of time taken and accuracy. One, it will take more time. Second, in terms of accuracy, because if you're trying to make a paragraph, right? These are only four sentences that are related to one very narrow idea. You'll always find a starter and a concluder if you're trying to make a paragraph. And the odd one out can be either the first sentence of the paragraph, which is two, three sentences away, or it can be last sentence of the paragraph, which is two, three sentences away. Right. So if you try to sequence, you might actually make a sequence, but it might be the sequence might be right, but it might not be the odd one out. Yeah. I'll do that later, the last para summary question. Yeah. Now, why should you not start by sequencing? Sentence that does not fit into the paragraph is not picked from somewhere else. Uh, yeah, the sentence that does not fit the passage, not fit in the passage, but from very same passage. To make the answer correct answer not very obvious, it has to be as close as possible to the actual paragraph. Since it's usually chosen a few sentences away before or after, you will be able to fit a sequence if you start sequencing. You will think this can be starter, this can be the closer. Your job is to get the odd one out of your way and not sequence the sentences and get the odd one out. Sequencing will mean a huge waste of time, so don't try to sequence. Right? So what you should use is the labeling method. Label the first sentence. Read the first sentence and label the sentence with whatever is the phrase, which typically captures the topic of this sentence. Right? What is the narrow topic of this sentence? Advantages of echolocation or something like latest advances. So give it like a top level label for it. Think of the label as sort of a generic title to the sentence, something that refers to a theme. So you can call it a theme. It can be a very, very narrow theme or a title. The task is now to check what? The label you have given to this sentence, does this apply to every other sentence? Or is any one sentence having a new idea, right? Usually the idea, the out of context sentence will seem very closely related, but it will be a new idea that usually starts in another paragraph. So the label you have given to the first sentence is applicable to all sentences, but one other sentence is the out of context one, or the first sentence itself is the one which is out of context. Proceed to label other sentences. When you label other sentences, even if you're not able to use the exact title as the first one, see if you can apply a close one. You are trying to see which ones are very, very close. Identify a common theme for binding the four labels and the odd one out. You will find that there is a very narrow common theme cutting across four sentences, and the theme will be the common label. The sentence that does not fit the theme should be an odd one out. If you're not able to do this, after this, only then do the sequence. If you're not sure about the answer or you want to double check, you shouldn't double check and waste time. Sequence the remaining sentences, you have found the links and see if you want. Ideally, if you do this labeling process correctly, you don't need to do the sequencing. Unless the question is a tricky one, which I'll show you later. First one, make a label. What can be a good label for this? Yes, good answer, Jalpa. Discovery of songs and birds, right? So development of much has been discovered about the what? Development of songs and birds. Song development in birds is the title, right? Is the label for one. Next one. This is also talking about song development. The next sentence, some species have a single song, others have a range of songs. So you can say development or you can say range of songs and keep it here. Right? Auditory stimuli for birds are the sounds of other birds. So this is not talking about songs, but sounds. Easy question. I'm not trying to sequence at all. This is about song development. This is about song development. This is about prescribed path to the development. A bird song begins with a sub song, the plastic song. Everything is this one. Only this one is option three. Yeah. I know SimCat questions are really hard. This is also one easy question. This all questions discussed today are actual cat questions, by the way. Right? This is also a actual cat question only. None of the questions are SimCat questions. All are cat questions that we discussed today. But there are crazy questions also, which are coming up for you. Now you have to do the labeling yourself. I will do it only later. Don't forget to read the meaning of the sentence also, or understand the meaning. This is a very good test, this question, to see of whether you have understood the technique correctly or not. Oh, sorry, I think poll has on. Yeah, yeah. I think five option question. No, sorry, sorry. I think it's my bad. Yep. 64% option three and 23% option four. People who study children's language spend a lot of time watching how babies react. Right? So, what should be a good title for this? Studying babies' reaction to speech. So, babies' study of children's language react. So, this is a broad thing that I will look at: babies and study of children's language and reactions to speech. So, it's around the study part of it. Right? They make films of adults and babies interacting, examine them very carefully whether babies show any signs of understanding what this thing. So again, they are showing very clearly about studying babies' reaction to speech. So first, I had a pretty generic title, but this I'm very, very clearly looking about studying this thing. And what are they saying? And examine them very carefully to see whether babies show any signs of understanding. They believe that babies begin to react to language from the very moment they're born. Babies' reaction to speech, this is not talking about studies. This is just saying that they believe that babies begin to react to language from the very moment. This thing is saying that sometimes the signs are very subtle, slight movements of the baby's eyes or heads. Now, the signs has a reference. They're making the film just to see whether the baby is showing any signs. Sometimes the signs are very subtle. And fifth one is saying you never notice them if you were just sitting with the child, but by watching a recording over and over. Now, this fifth and fourth, you might say that fourth one also is talking about babies' reactions. But the moment you read the fifth one, you never notice them if you're sitting with the child, but by watching a recording over and over, you know that the science is referring to these movies. So 1, 2, 4, and 5 are all talking about the study, how these people use the recordings, and then in the recordings what is the benefit of having a recording, right? So this is, so if you need to sequence also, you can clearly get a link that starter is 1 and the link is 2, 4, and 5, so that you clearly know. Now you need to look at what is option 3. They believe that babies begin to react to language from the very moment. Now, is this belief the reason why they are conducting the study, or is this belief the finding of their study? Whatever it is, this is not immediately part of this 4 sentences. It will come either somewhere later or it will come somewhere before, right? Is that clear? Why this is a very, very narrow part. They believe that babies react to language, so it can seem that it is something related. But if you narrow it down just only to the study, you'll get the answer on this one. Yeah. Next one. We have made only 4 options in this one, so you guys can put your answers in the chat. That's super tricky. Okay, but because it's so interesting, I want to look at the poll on this one. I'll make it slightly easier. I'll say it's not option 1. Try to solve this as if this is 2, 3, 4, 5. Take these choices to be 2, 3, 4, 5, and then put it. First one is 2, second one is 3, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'll show you the original passage also and why this is such a crazy question type. Yeah, so if you want to choose, so read it as option 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. If you want to choose extreme temperature, choose option 2. It's first option is 2, 3, sentence 2, sentence 3, sentence 4, sentence 5. Yeah. as expected between sentence 3, 4, and 5, 30, 30, 30, right? It cannot be a more dead heat than this, because it's absolutely that sort of a question only. And this is the reason why this question type is tough. First one, as India looks to increase the number of cities, our urban planning must factor in potential natural disasters and work out contingencies. Now, urban planning, disaster planning has to happen. So this is one. Authorities must revise data, upgrade infrastructure, mitigation, even if their local area hasn't been visited by a calamity yet. So you haven't had a calamity, but it is saying that you should do contingency planning. Extreme temperatures, droughts, or this thing have more than doubled. This is giving you some data, right? Incidence of extreme weather conditions. There is no denying the fact that our baseline normal weather is changing. Again, it is talking about change in weather conditions. Last one is, it is not a question of whether we will be hit, but when we will be hit. Now, in a different way, this is saying that certainty of natural disasters. Now, if I have to make a theme, right, I know that definitely four are part of one set. I'm not able to make four. I need to make three a part of one set. First, let's look at that. Three sentences should be part of the theme. Which one are talking about natural disasters cup and natural disasters preparedness? This first one is talking that we need to definitely prepare in advance. And second one is saying it is, even if your area has not been hit by a natural calamity, you still must prepare. And fifth one is saying, because it's not a question of but when, it's not a question of whether, but definitely when. So if I have to choose three sentences that are definitely part of the, remember we're talking about something which is very close to each other, sentences that are very, very close to each other in a paragraph. Which three sentences are likely to be very, very close to each other in a paragraph? It's no longer a question of whether we will be hit. Authorities must revise data and we must be prepared. So 1, 2, and maybe say 5 also. It is not a question of whether we will be hit, but rather when, right? That we will be hit for sure. It is not talking about weather changes, but it's talking about natural calamity. So which three sentences definitely should be very, very close to each other? It is 1, 2, and 4, but it's 5 is definitely 1, 2, and 5. 5 is definitely saying will be hit, and 1 and 2 are saying we must be prepared, even if it's not happened so far. Now we are left with 3 and 4. 3 is saying extreme temperatures, droughts, and forest fires have doubled. 4 is saying there is no denying that our baseline normal weather is changing. Now, technically think about it, there is no way that I can actually differentiate, because both 3 and 4 are essentially saying the same thing, that extreme temperature or normal weather is changing. Now, can you find anything in the way these sentences are written that these four sentences are definitely from the same paragraph and one sentence is from a different paragraph? Can you just figure that out? Now that I've said that 3 and 4 is very tough, but is there something in the way the sentence is written? See, the thing with starter is that it can be anywhere. Vivek said a good thing. Fourth is written in a strong manner as the other three. Good. 3 looks like random info. 3 is odd. Good. Any other clue? I know given the data is justifiable, right? Now, if we look at each of these sentence is using a particular kind of language. As India looks to increase the number of cities, our urban planning must factor in. Authorities must revise even if their local area has not been visited. There is no denying the fact that our baseline normal weather is changing. It is no longer a question of whether we will be hit, but rather when. Now, 1, 2, 4, and 5 are all talking about what? Our weather is changing. We have to plan if their local area has not happened, when we will be hit. So 1, 2, 4, and 5 are likely to be part of the paragraph very close to each other, and 3 is slightly far, maybe slightly above or slightly later. which is why 3 is the answer on this one. But it's something where it's very, very tough to, actually, get this right. If I show the actual passage on this, 3 is given from the next, is 3 is a sentence in the paragraph above, and 1, 2, 4, and 5 are all sentences from the next paragraph. What they have done trickily in this particular part is they have removed words like therefore, so, but. For example, as India likes this one, authorities must, though there is a therefore here. So they have removed all the buts and the therefore and since and everything, and it makes it seem as if all these sentences are standalone. Right? Yeah, 3 has mentioned the forest fires, which are this thing. Calamity is different from change in normal weather. Yeah. So this is why this thing is tricky. It is talking about the natural calamities in general. 4 is talking about no. I know Tushar, but it's an original sentence. So that's how it is saying that our baseline normal weather is changing. What is normal is changing. So in the actual sentence, 1, 2, 4, and 5 are all in one paragraph, and 3 is in the preceding paragraph. Why not 5? I don't know why not 5, because it is all given in one paragraph. It's not a question of whether in this thing. 3 is not saying for what we have to prepare. Yes, nature's fury. You're right. Now, why not 5? Because 5 is clearly talking about we will be hit by nature's fury. 1 is be ready for disasters. 2 is even if it has not happened so far. 5 is disaster will happen. Now, 1, 4, and 5 definitely have to be an answer. Between 3 and 4, there is no denying the fact it is honestly tough. If I know, I can say after I know the answer why 3 is the answer. But in an exam, I do not know how will I choose between 3 and 4, because they removed all of the other sentences before it. Yeah, which is why this is a tricky question type. This is an easier one. Try to do this. Tushar, normal means what we are used to. Just because these are written, finally, this we know that we're talking about sentences which are very close together. So, and we're talking about disasters, that it's definitely changing, that climate is getting better, that is tough to, the tough stretch. Yeah, I think in this particular case also, maybe I know it's tough given the options. Maybe instead of the poll, you can type your answers here, and that'll be a better this thing. 1, 3, 1, 3. So bulk of the people have chosen 3. Yep, bulk of the people have chosen 3, which is what the options are also saying. Smartphones and self-tracking apps. So option 1 is talking about smartphones, even a digestive this thing, and sleep patterns, right? Next, researchers have coined a new term to describe insomnia brought on by paying too much attention to smartphones and sleep tracking, right? Smartphones, sleep tracking apps, and insomnia. Right? So these three are linked. This first one is also talking that. This one is just talking about sleep. This is talking about the market for sleep apnea. Fifth one is talking about threat to sleep from smartphones. So if you look at all the sentences which are narrowly related to each other, so you have, yeah, exactly. Because of five, we need to choose one and well, two and four seems linked, three seems completely different. So smartphone and app and sleep problems, app, and because of all of these reasons why we have these, apps of sufficient hours of rest, and last one is also threat to sleep. So sleep is mentioned here, an app. This one is talking about sleep tracking app. So everything 1, 2, 4, 5, only 3 is talking about this one, sleep. So which is why 3 is the answer, and that's the right answer given by them. Now, look at this. This is the original sentence. The original sentence, sleep, is in the same paragraph. And this existence of a market is a new paragraph. They have removed one, they have made this the odd one out, and they have joined this. Because we use the labeling method, we got it right. But this is the original paragraph. That in the paragraph, they removed a middle sentence and they joined this half thing and the next thing, and they have decided. So they have decided that the original guy himself has not written it in sequence or whatever. This is why only the labeling thing works. But even the labeling thing will not work because this is the trickiest question type of all. So this is what they did on this question. By the way, this is the extreme temperature passage. See what they have done. This is the passage. They've removed words like thus, and to cope, given the trend. The answer of the last question is option 3, Sejal. Sleep only. That sleep is a blissful thing. That is the answer. I'm just showing the original source. That's it. Can you see this one also, how they have altered it? Given the trend, they've removed that. Yeah. But if we... Yep. Now look at the next one. This is from a website. I think it's from, so these sources are from, I just typed the question online after the exam and I got the passage. It's from India Today or Week or something. Now look at this one. This is the craziest thing. This is I didn't want to do this question because none of us can answer this question also. But this is the passage. This is how they have given it. First sentence is 5. This sentence is 4. This sentence is 2. This sentence is 1. And this. And they have said this one is the odd one out. This sentence is exactly there, bang in the middle of this paragraph. And they have said that this is the odd one out. Absolutely. If you try to sequence it, this is what they have done. This is the actual passage, no gap. They gave this entire thing jumbled up and they said the sentence in the middle is straight away. See, in India, we know this whole challenging the answer, this, that. In math, we can still challenge, right? But they just say challenge the answer, but on a verbal question, challenging answers, abhi baith ke matlab, I don't know, in verbal cases, it's never happened, they never admit. Yeah. So I don't know which year in which I am also. This is from 2021, I think. So we have to check which I am made this. But it doesn't change too much. Yeah, circus is always there on some of these, questions, right? So that. So yeah, so that is why I feel that in the VA strategy, ideal sequence is do missing sentence, jumbled paragraph, summary, and labeling. This is my sequence. You can, choose any other sequence, as well. You can choose if you feel summary is your strength, you can choose summary. So, but my sequence would be missing sentence, jumbled paragraph, summary, and then labeling. Right? Or maybe missing sentence, summary, jumbled paragraph in that, order. Uh, Labeling I'll always do last. Yeah. You cannot master technique over one SIMCAT. It will take some time for you to perfect it. Solve all VA questions across SIMCAT. So you've done enough mocks. So do this using no CAT PYQs. No, VA questions don't repeat. Why labeling last, Kishan? Because the odds of getting a labeling question right are very, very low because of these reasons, right? Because you end up sequencing. If labeling works for you, great, right? But labeling always seems a bit tricky for me to do because they do all of these things like they edit the passage itself randomly and yeah. Yeah. So now quickly I'll take a few questions. So or see, this is my suggested order. You can choose any order, but the only thing is solve two questions of a type back to back because questions will be jumbled. You'll get one summary, one a jumbled paragraph, and then you'll get one incorrect sentence in context. Solve both questions of the same type together so that before you're starting, you can say, okay, I need to do this process, this technique, and that's how yeah, you have to do that. Okay, yeah. So Vivek says I'm facing a lot of struggle to take a VIRC score about 2022, not able to visit more than two RCs and VA questions, effectively attempt 10, 12 questions. So Vivek, I think two things I want you to look at. One, look at the RC Masterclass 2. That might be useful for you because I've suggested a different method for you to solve. The recording will be there. And please look at the LMTC verbal section, time definition, how to solve the RCs, how to select the RCs. So please look at that. I think between the RC Masterclass, today's session, and the LMTC verbal, most of the strategies and queries in terms of how to prepare are also taken care of. So at this point of time, which source to read and improve reading speed and comprehension? Arushi, at this point of time, you cannot waste any time just reading articles. Solve as many RCs as possible. LMTC verbal, Manjit, you can find the recording on my IMS. Right? Is actual CAT RC easy than IMS SimCats? Then I would say 25% easy. Definitely. Mudit, do you use paragraph to questions approach? Mudit, if say very rarely, because I don't have a time issue, I don't have a comprehension issue, I don't use it. But if I would say that, suppose for whatever reason I lose time and I get stuck, and I have only 5 minutes to answer a passage, I would use paragraph to questions. Tejas, you can leave queries on my blog, thecatwriter.com. That is the blog that I run. You can leave queries on that and I'll get back immediately, usually within 24 hours. Jalpa, for that this thing, so please look at the LMTC sessions also and the five pause method. So I think one is you need to have a very, very clear technique to solve these questions. So first you need to use this technique actively for VA. Next is the five pause method for RC. In case your RC accuracy is weak, please watch the RC2 masterclass recording. You'll get it. There the paragraph to questions approach and you should be there. Manoj, I think that I've given like a detailed plan in terms of last mile to cat recording. You'll find that online. In that, we have a 90-day, 80-day prep plan very, very clearly as to how to do this thing. Focusing on past papers can help in quant and DLR. Like, yeah, but if you feel you want to try doing it by, gut feel, you'll get, what this thing. Deepak, if you're getting distracted while reading a passage, see if you want to say start reading slightly under your breath, maybe that will help, right? Tanay, VA question need to be skipped maybe around like 30 to 45 seconds, maximum 1 minute. No, Ambuj, absolutely no time right now to just keep reading Aeon magazine, solve as many RCs as possible. So, Daksh, to practice a lot of RCs, first in the prepare module, you will find that there are enough and more RC passages we've given for practice, one passage each. Once you finish all of those, then you can use any other source that for practice outside. So I think if you've exhausted all IMS material, then maybe using GMAT RCs for practice also is not a bad idea at all. Janvi says it's okay to practice from 2003 CAT papers. Janvi, it's okay to practice from 2003 CAT papers. For quant, it is not useful for 2003 for quant because the quant then was very, very tough. So there is no point solving 2003 papers for quant. See, ideally from 2017, all the papers are fine to solve, is what I would say, to keep it simple. So RC, if you have finished that RC from the IMS source, or if you finished all IMS material, the GMAT material is also not this thing. So the blog that I run is called, it's not a vlog, it is a written blog. So it is called thecatwriter.com. Yeah. So for you, all the sources that you need, so three sources. One is my blog, thecatwriter.com. On that, you will find, say, how to increase your accuracy. Open the blog on the website because then you can clearly see the navigation at the top. On the phone, the navigation might not be very, very simple. You will, so LMTC, last mile to cat recordings will be available on MyMS. Everything about how to prepare, how should you divide your time between VA and RC, all of those are covered there. Second, I do this method called the 5 pause method to solve RC. So we've done that in LMTC as well, or you can use RC Masterclass 2 or RC Masterclass 1. So all the masterclasses will cover the technique. Entire test taking strategy and prep plan is covered in the last mile to cat videos. All of this will be available on the home page of MyIMS. Tanay, matlab, analytical and argumentative, basically there is no difference between the two, both are more or less the same. So how to choose, I've done that. Again, we've done that in detail, how to select RC passages in that last mile to cat session. Please take a look at that. Between the two, ideally choose something which the text is not very heavy and you can read faster than usual speed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Chalo. We'll wrap up now, guys. I think it's quite a bit of time. So you for any this thing you can always you can just drop a comment on my blog thecatwriter.com. I immediately reply, usually on the same day or otherwise maximum between 24 hours. Yeah. So we'll wrap up for today. I'll be taking a few more sessions. I'll be taking one more RC masterclass, so that is there for us to do. And I'll also be taking sessions on how to manage your mind and how to psychologically handle the stress of everything. Right. Hope the session was useful. All the best, guys. Yeah. Bye. Bye, Ambuj. Bye, Mega. Bye, Manjeet. Actual cat, Tushar, yes, are easier than the SIM cats. I'm confirming this for you. Yeah. Especially SIM cat verbal. Yeah.